Yours for $17.50 with any Estee Lauder purchase. Self-Action Tanning Cream. Now at all Yonkers stores.
Increasing cloudiness this evening with temperatures in the 70s.
Good evening, I'm Hugh Downs.
And I'm Barbara Walters, and this is 2020.
From ABC News, around the world and into your home, the stories that touch your life with Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters. This is 2020. Tonight, exploiting the search for MIAs. Last summer, POW hunter Jack Bailey made headlines, said this MIA is alive. And this photo proves it.
My brother, and I don't care what anybody says, is alive. We have the proof.
But ABC News correspondent James Walker crisscrossed the globe, found the man in the photo, proved that it was all a fraud. Bailey's reaction.
Part of this goddamn thing has been a conspiracy. I'll bet your neck.
The 2020 expose, the cruelest hoax of all. Plus, workers cheated out of their pensions.
You're talking about people who had worked 19 years towards this benefit.
But when computers flagged their names, they were out the door. It was all part of a secret plan.
I thought it was an honest layoff.
The closer they got to benefits, the more likely they were to be fired.
I needed 16 days to get 20 years.
Lynn Scher reports. Workers shocked and angry. No one told them, count yourself out. Also, women and sex in the 90s.
If you do have sex, use a condom.
But women know that's easier said than done. Many men won't wear condoms. Now, the female condom. Maybe that's the answer.
It's funny at first, and then when you understand how it works, it makes perfect sense.
John Stossel visits a single scene and asks, sex and condoms, do you or don't you? Those stories tonight, June 5th, 1992, after this brief message.
Morning! What's for breakfast in modern times?
Oh, just cereal.
Back in my century, we enjoyed grains kept whole for a more natural, hearty taste.
You great grains.
You bet it's great. Toasted wheat, oats, and barley. Kept whole, full of flavor.
Great. Dates, raisins, even pecans. This really is delicious.
Now I'm hungry. Got another bowl?
What was great back then is great grains now. A great new cereal from Post.
The question has haunted the nation for nearly 2 decades. Are some American servicemen missing in action in the Vietnam War still alive in Southeast Asia? Well, over the years, a cottage industry has grown up around the issue. But for all the hot leads, all the reported sightings, no Vietnam MIA has ever been found alive. And that's why the nation was electrified when several photographs surfaced, seeming to prove that some MIAs were still alive.
Well, perhaps the photo that most raised hopes was said to be that of Army Captain Donald Carr. The man who made that photo public is Jack Bailey. Bailey has made quite a name for himself, crusading on the POW issue. But tonight, in a 2020 investigation, ABC News correspondent James Walker provides the living proof that Bailey's photo of Donald Carr was a hoax. Every picture does indeed tell a story.
Pictures have always been important to retired Air Force Colonel Jack Bailey. Pictures don't lie. They are proof that what he says is true.
I fought 3 wars for this country. World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And I'm still over there trying to do something.
Indeed, Colonel Bailey's photo albums chronicle his long military career. In World War II, a teenage aircraft mechanic. During Korea, a dashing jet fighter pilot. And in Vietnam, his main job was investigating plane crashes.
The president of Operation Rescue, please welcome Colonel Jack Bailey.
Bailey is a POW hunter on a die-hard mission to rescue American servicemen that he says are still alive and still imprisoned in Southeast Asia.
Why and God's will would Jack Bailey be involved in this thing at my age for anything but the sole purpose that I started with it, to bring somebody out?
Now 69, Bailey runs Operation Rescue out of Bangkok, close to the front lines of the POW search and home base for his private intelligence network. On this day, he took us to meet one of his secret agents, a man named Mario who said he made clandestine trips into Laos. Since 1965, Bailey has claimed his Operation Rescue team has pinpointed the location of POW camps throughout Southeast Asia, where he says Americans are being held.
Just in Vietnam, between, I'd say, 100 to 200 Americans that are alive. I will also tell you that where this man supposedly was, there's 40-some Americans being held against their will here. We still have, right now, I would say, 50 prisoners of war being held in Laos.
Bailey returns home to the United States to raise money. His message, that the U.S. government has betrayed the missing in action and the families they left behind. People who attend these rallies see bamboo cages like this one where the POWs are supposedly held. They hear the latest news of sightings of live Americans, and they buy the mementos that help finance the efforts of Bailey and others. Carol Collins, a regular at POW MIA rallies, is the former wife of Army Captain Donald Carr, who was shot down in Laos in 1971.
I have great admiration for him, for what he's tried to do.
Mrs. Collins and her son Donnie still believe that Captain Carr will return one day.
And I've always thought in the back of my mind, and Donnie has too, that Don was somewhere in Southeast Asia, living, you know, alive.
Hundreds of Americans held captive in Vietnam did come home in 1973. But the fact is that since the war ended in 1975, not one American prisoner of war has been found alive in Southeast Asia. A 4-month investigation that took us from Thailand to the U.S. Virgin Islands to Germany found that Jack Bailey's reputation as a POW hunter was built on deception and broken promises that always ended in bitter disappointment for the families of the missing men. As early as 1982, in this memo obtained by 2020, Defense Department officials accused Bailey of raising funds by making false claims. As a result, Bailey has battled with the Pentagon for a decade.
What am I so bitter about the U.S. government? I am bitter because they do everything in the world to discredit anyone that's involved in this issue. I could be Jesus Christ, and they would discredit me.
Yet with his highly patriotic appeals, Bailey has raised over $3 million in the past 8 years. Bailey says most of the money went to pay for fundraising costs.
We received, out of that $3 million, roughly 20%.
But to see how Bailey went about raising money, we return to a proud community he visited in 1987, Altoona, Pennsylvania. It's a small town that never deserted its Vietnam veterans, nor their lost comrades.
I don't want this to sound corny. And if you want freedom, you fight for it. The government says, we need you, you go. That's the type of community we have here.
Don Skinner, a Vietnam veteran, says the people of Altoona are generous, even when outsiders arrive in town, as Bailey did in 1987, looking to raise money. Skinner attended the Operation Rescue press conference and was immediately incensed by what he saw lying on a table. The supposed remains of an American soldier he suspected were fake.
He had a pile of bones, neatly wrapped up in the American flag laying on the table.
What do you mean, a pile of bones?
Just a pile of bones, and they were folded up in the American flag.
Skinner accused Bailey of exploiting human remains. Tempers flared, then a scuffle, and the meeting broke up. It wouldn't be the last time the mercurial Jack Bailey would get angry when challenged about his motives.
You're going to try to take the good people of our town here in Altoona and try to soak them out of their money without one single result, not even close to anything resembling an MIA as he brought back to this country or to our government.
So he was using the remains as a fundraising tactic?
Yes. Oh, yes, that was a whole fundraising tactic there. The press, the family members, the remains, that was a fundraising thing.
For 2 years, David Patterson believed in Bailey. He'd invited him to Altoona and went to Thailand, where he helped Bailey make fundraising films like this. Patterson now admits the remains exhibited in Altoona were fake, not those of an American MIA, but of an Asian woman.
Skinner had every right to be upset. But see, those people were seeing the real Jack Bailey. As as the crook, as the rip-off artist, where I saw Jack Bailey as America's hero.
In 1989, Patterson broke ranks with Bailey in a bitter dispute over fundraising.
Films like this give the impression that Jack Bailey spends a lot of time out in the jungle at crash sites.
He's never spent a day in a crash site since I've known him, since he's got out of the military.
Jack Bailey never went out on a trip during the 2 years that you worked with him to a crash site?
Never. Never.
Patterson says you never spent any time out in the field really searching for American
Are you
POWs.
going to put this on here? I'm not going to answer that question. That's coming from a goddamn guy that is in a nut ward in a hospital in Pennsylvania, and I can prove it.
But Bailey provided no such evidence, and Patterson denied it. In fact, Bailey had once made a fundraising film praising Patterson.
I'm taping in behalf of Dave Patterson, and I'm doing it because I think Dave has done an awful lot in the last 2 years on the POW-MIA issue.
Whoever's not with Jack Bailey is either an agent for the DIA, an agent for the CIA, a bona fide blown-out nut. Yeah, I can believe that from Jack.
But last year, Colonel Bailey seemed to have the last word. In his moment of triumph, he stood before the world press and waved evidence of an American, still alive after 22 years and still held captive in Southeast Asia. Bailey identified the man as Army Captain Donald Gene Carr.
I've been working on the Carr case now since 1988. I've had intelligence on this particular prison camp since 1988. This man in this picture is the same.
Carr's former wife, Carol Collins, was unsure about the photo at first. She spent hours comparing it to Carr's military pictures.
Once I became convinced in my mind that it was Don, I wanted it to be Don, and I wanted him to come home.
My brother, and I don't care what anybody says, is alive. We have the proof.
And Bailey produced Carr's brother Matthew to confirm that the picture was indeed Donald Carr.
I want to thank you for being here.
It was an emotional scene.
How much can these people take? Enough is enough, Matt.
When we met Bailey in Bangkok, he told us he had pinpointed the location of the prison camp in Laos where Carr was being held.
This is the frontal shot here of actually the cage that I think that they put in part of the time.
So ABC News set out to find the exact location of the prison cages. But the trail, instead of leading to a prisoner of war camp in Laos, led here to a one-time exotic bird export company outside Bangkok. And the prison cages in Bailey's photos, they turned out to be bird cages. Even more startling, the owner of the bird business knew the man in the photo that Bailey had told the world was Donald Carr. Tell me about this man.
Yeah, my friend, Mr. Gunter District.
This is your friend?
Yes.
You're sure of that?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. He's German.
He's a German man?
Yes, man. Yeah.
How long have you known him?
Over 6 years now.
And where is Gunter Dietrich now?
Now, I think he's in Germany.
In Germany?
Yes.
And where in Germany was the man in the picture? In prison. Gunter Dietrich was charged with bird smuggling. When we confronted Bailey and an assistant with the evidence the Carr photo was a fake, the colonel became enraged.
Part of this goddamn thing has been a conspiracy. I'll bet your f***ing neck.
Because it's not your fault.
You're weak.
This man's fault. No. It's not his fault.
David Patterson, who worked for Bailey for 2 years before he quit, sums up the man this way.
It was either that he was the best con man in the world, or he believes his own lies.
But when we asked Bailey for another interview about Patterson's allegations that he had routinely faked pictures, he blew up again.
Jim, hold it a f***ing minute. Just stop it a minute. I don't like what I'm hearing, Bill. No, I don't want what.
Colonel, I just want to your thoughts. Colonel, I just...
My thoughts, my ass. It's another f***ing slant.
It's not, Colonel. Give you your chance to talk about
my chance to talk
Despite
about
Bailey's angry claims that criticism of him is unfounded, 2020 has learned he is under criminal investigation by the FBI and the Justice Department for his role in publicizing the fraudulent Carr photo. It's a measure of the power of this issue that many MIA families have endured so much anguish. Even after the car photo was exposed as a hoax, Mrs. Collins was unwilling to criticize Colonel Bailey.
Do you think you would have been better off had the picture never surfaced?
No. No, I don't. I still want to believe, with all my heart, that he is alive and that he's going to come home.
But what does your head tell you?
That he's not.
Despite what her head told her, Mrs. Collins had traveled to Thailand last year to seek Bailey's help in finding Carr. And last month, Mrs. Collins paid her own way to Germany to meet Gunther Dietrich, to make absolutely sure he was not her former husband.
My name is Gunther Dietrich.
2020 tracked down Gunther Dietrich, too, in East Germany, where he is free on bail awaiting trial. Are you the man in the photograph? Asked, as Jack Bailey contended, if he was really Donald Carr.
Sind Sie Captain Donald G. Carr?
Nie gewesen.
When we left him in Thailand, Colonel Bailey seemed crushed. The pictures he so believed in had come back to haunt him. The colonel even talked about ending his 27-year mission in search of American POWs. But when we met again in March, Bailey was his old self.
If people like Jack Bailey folded up our tents and stopped and quit, if there's one man alive over there, he will never come home.
My God, what misery this causes. Jim, in your opinion, is this man cynical, or does he believe what he says is the truth?
I think Huey believes his own tales. For instance, we heard him say that he has fought in 3 wars. But his service record says that he saw no combat in World War II, and it also says that he didn't even set foot on the Korean Peninsula during the Korean War.
Wow. How has he managed to flourish all this time, do you think?
I think it's part of the issue, the nature of this very delicate, very difficult issue. What family who lost a serviceman does not want to believe that perhaps he might still be alive? And they send out fundraising brochures, and they say, I know that somebody's alive, just send us $25 and we can prove it. Of course, no one's ever been rescued.
Fascinating. Thank you, Jim.
Well, next, John Stossel asking about sex and condoms. Women and men talk candidly about why they do or don't use them. And this is the new female condom being tested now. If a man refuses to wear a condom, it gives the woman the option. Don't go away.
Only 2 American-made luxury automobiles provide both driver and passenger side airbags. One of them is a Lincoln. And the other one is a Lincoln. With Lincoln, it's easy to be on the safe side. Lincoln, what a luxury